1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 ideas.
Can you say welcome to the Strained Hammy Podcast?
Strained Hammy Podcast.
Welcome to the Strained Hammy Podcast. It's Tuesday, April 2nd. My name is Mark.
I'm Rex. And I am Travis.
Today on the Strained Hammy Podcast, we're going to talk about expectations for the Rangers season, our predictions, and a little preview. We'll talk about Elvis and Tony Romo's extensions, and then Mavericks talk. All right, we just finished watching the perfect game that was not. We were crushed as the ball flew through U's legs. So I'm a little depressed right now. What about you guys?
Well, I was originally going to predict Yu Darvish 30-0, but after that performance, I don't know if I can agree with that. Not even a perfect game. He might get to 20 wins.
Pretty weak.
Yeah. So it's a little depressing. I think we were all bummed about that, but. You gotta love you. We talked about this last week or the week before, and how we set up our rotations. And Travis and I had you first, and you had Harrison. But starting to look like the Yu Darvish as your ace is not that far off.
I still don't think it matters much. I don't have a problem with them rewarding Harrison for being the best pitcher last year, but that's a whole different subject.
Yeah. And Darvish will be lined up with Weaver in the Angels series. So
yeah.
Cool with that. So, what do we think for the rest of the season? We're 2 games into it. They're 1-1. Not a very impressive start, but certainly rebounded tonight with the 7-0 win, and looks like they should take care of the Astros now that they're in the division a little bit better. But
one would hope.
My initial response is I don't think they're going to be as good as they were last year. Last year they won 93 games. Seems like they didn't even win a game for the last 2 weeks of the season, and they still made it in the playoffs with 93. But I really have a hard time seeing them win 90. I think they'll get somewhere between 86 and 89 wins. I don't think they'll be in the playoff consideration this year. And most of that has to do with, honestly, with just finding firepower on offense. I don't know. I know they've got the bats there. I don't know if they have the bats that can consistently put up the runs that they need.
I see them winning 90 games, if only because the Astros are in the division now and they get to play them 19 times. But I have a little bit more faith in the offense. The questions that I have lie with the depth of the team. I don't think they're a very deep team. They've got serious injury-related issues going on at the beginning of the season. I see them winning 91 games. I do have them in the wild card play-in game, and then I would suspect they'll lose in the ALDS. But I guess I have a little bit more of a brighter outlook than you would. When we look back at this season, in a couple of years, I think we'll see it more as like a bridge from the Josh Hamilton years to the Elvis Jurickson years. Mm-hmm. And I don't think it'll be a year that anybody really remembers, but it'll still be a really exciting season to watch. I think 90 wins is nothing to sniff at. I mean, that's a high number, but I think the A's are going to be a tough team. It's kind of funny because the AL West has kind of turned into the AL East. We got Angels are like the Yankees now. Rangers are sort of like Boston, making smart moves, but they still got a bunch of money. Then you got like the A's or like the Rays. It'll be an interesting season to watch. And Travis, what do you think?
I'm a little more pessimistic about this season. Although if tonight is any indication, every 5th day should be really exciting.
Yeah.
What I really think is, I think all the pitching injuries early on in the season will hurt them, and I think the fact that Nefty may not make it back at all to be any part of the team is going to hurt him a little bit. I think that they really need Jurickson to be a player. this season to be a complete team, and they're obviously not going to be able to move Kinsler mid-season, and Jerkson may not be ready as well. So I feel like they're a couple of moves away, but I do feel like they're building in the right direction. I do think this season, like Mark said, will kind of be the bridge between successful versions of the Rangers. And this may be wishful thinking for me, but I have them at 85 games. But the reason why I have them that low is I kind of am almost hoping that the bad things that are going to happen to the Rangers over the next couple of years all happen this year in a season where I don't really see them being uber successful. So, if they were completely fortunate and won 93 games, I don't think they're going to win the World Series. So I wouldn't mind if some misfortune, other than like serious injury to Yu Darvish, happened to them this season. The thing that I do want to see going forward, though, is I feel like the Rangers do have the money to compete in free agency, and I'm really excited about what they did this week. But
the TV deal kicks in next year, so that'll be more money on it.
But I do want to see them. Go out and compete selectively in free agency, like they did with Beltre. I feel like they could really use another player like that going forward.
I agree with your assessment. Like and Mark said too, it's a bridge year, and if they get 85 plus wins in a bridge year, I mean, you could absolutely do a lot worse than that. So I'm kind of hopeful that that's the case, and that if this is a down year and they still get 85 plus wins, I would say that's a successful year. And I'm hoping that everything I read was that Jerkson and Profar didn't make the big league roster because they wanted him playing every day.
Yeah.
And as it were with positions that were filled, he was going to be a utility guy and rotational, and that's not what they wanted. They wanted him to keep working on his game day in, day out, and so minors were the best place for him. And the idea I'm thinking is that at some point Kinsler is going to move either to the outfield or maybe help out with first base if Mitch Moreland doesn't work out, or if they need a right-handed first baseman and Lance Berkman just stays as the DH because he's a switch hitter, or whatever the case may be. I think eventually you'll see that change where Profar comes up, but it's because Kinsler moves, and that will help. Going back to that whole bridging concept, it's moving an older player out of a positional spot and bringing in the young prospect, and I think getting those guys up certainly screams successful future, even if this year isn't 90 wins like we've been used to the last 3 years.
We don't want to sound ungrateful for like an 85 win season coming from what we were in the 2000s. I mean, certainly we don't want to.
I would have loved 85 wins.
Yeah. So
I would have loved 500.
Yeah, we don't want to sound
break 500.
like spoiled Rangers fans by any means, but the past 3 years the bar has been raised a little bit, and while we might not necessarily expect to see postseason play, we really like it.
It's definitely exciting, and I think all that has to do with what the last several years have been built up to. We talked about in the past with all the young guys, and my whole thing was I wanted to see them now, and part of it because I think this is kind of a bridge season. So I want to get those guys in, get them playing now, and see what the future holds. But we wouldn't even have that to look forward to if it wasn't for the job that John Daniels and his scouts and front office guys have done at building up the minor league system and building up a way to get some talented young guys into the organization. If they didn't have that, we might have been to a World Series once, and then we would have been like, what now? Because we wouldn't have anything to look forward to. But now, even if we say, like you said, 85 wins is not anything to be depressed about, but it's something to look forward to, and we have something to look forward to every year going forward because of all the young talent and prospects that we have to look forward to. That I don't see this team regressing to the early 90s or even late 90s, early aughts teams that we were grown used to for a while.
Yeah, just because of pitching. Like
Yeah, I mean, they just
have a
have so
solid
much
foundation,
talent
yeah.
that you have to look forward to every season.
Yeah, I think it's only natural that, people want to see Profar now. But, especially with the Elvis extension, which we'll talk about a little bit later, I think they are making the right decision. Leaving him in Triple. Let's keep in mind he hasn't spent any time in AAA. And I think he will benefit from that extra time. And plus, the Rangers won't be using any of his service time. So they'll be able to hold on to him for a little bit longer, which is nice now that we have Elvis locked up for, at least another 4 years. So that's something to look at.
To that point, that's an advantage if you can delay him coming up, but still have him playing every day and developing.
Mm-hmm.
That's just a bonus.
Definitely.
It's just a feather in your cap.
A monster middle infield for
10
4 or 5 years.
Years to come,
10 years if you can get Elvis re-signed again.
Yeah, which will be interesting.
Yeah. I think one thing maybe we haven't talked about yet is I really do kind of like the team as constructed, especially knowing Jurickson's on the way to kind of create that infield. But I kind of like them as constructed. Part of me being down on the Rangers right now is that I feel like the Angels this year could be really, really good. This year and maybe next year. But this year, I'd almost say for sure, when everybody's still sort of in their prime and Hamilton's bat hasn't slowed down that much and Pujols is still kind of a shadow of...
Yeah, they've got questions about their... They've got questions about their rotation.
Yeah.
They got worse there, but their bullpen got better.
Well,
their bullpen
at the top of their rotation, they're one of the best, but...
Well, yeah, the very top.
past
The
that.
very top. Their bullpen, though, was their biggest weakness last year, and they've improved that. Anyway, you were making a point, and then I interrupted it. Sorry.
No, I think the Angels could run away with the West this year, especially. We have the Astros in our division, and that's great, but so do they.
Yeah.
And I think they may beat up on the Rangers more than we're used to. Obviously, I think 2 years ago we definitely had an advantage over the Angels, and last year I think they won the season series, but it was pretty close. I feel like this year could be a different story because I feel like we could have a hard time putting up runs with them.
I think we're only about 3 seasons away from them having our entire roster, though. So
the roster that we don't want, though.
Right.
Yeah.
So I feel like they're definitely going to pay the price for the decisions they're making now down the line. But I think this year and possibly next year they could be really good.
Yeah.
And so that's part of my adjustment of the win total of the Rangers is I think that the Angels could be pretty dominant this year in the division. So
speaking about the Angels and the other teams in the division, I think we've all addressed that we don't have the Rangers winning the division, and it could vary depending on how many wins you give everybody else. So who do you have winning the division, and how do you have the teams finishing in the division? And let's run through.
I've got the Angels winning the division. With like 94 games, I'd guess. So it puts them 3 over the Rangers in my prediction. And then I've got the A's making the playoff or making the other wild card spot. There's 2 wild card spots now. So I've got both wild card spots coming from the AL West. And then I've got the Rangers beating the A's in that 1-game playoff on the back of you, Darvish. And and then after that, I don't know who they'll lose to, but they're going to lose to somebody in the ALDS. So that's how I've got it shaken out.
And Mariners above the Astros?
Yeah, I think that's a pretty safe assumption. I think the Mariners got better, and didn't get better by much, but they did get better this offseason.
I think that's the same with me. I had Angels winning the division with 90-plus wins. I think we're gonna see a lower win total in the division this year. I think last year we had 3 teams Angels had 89, so 3 teams within 90. And this year I think the Angels are the only team that gets 90. I think the Rangers get close, but I don't know if they quite get there. But they still finish second, and then I think the A's finished third, but closer to 500. I think last year was kind of an epiphany year. I know they had a great pitching staff. But if you look at their lineup, they really shouldn't have won games that they won. Yeah. They won a lot of 1-0 game, 2-1 games, and that's not something that you could count on for a whole season. So I think last year was kind of a strange year for them, but it happened to work. And then Seattle and Houston. I mean, Seattle will probably be improved, like you said, but not dramatically, and Astros just are terrible. So
the low win totals, do you see that as a product of the AL West teams beating up on each other, or do you see just a market,
part of that they'll beat up on each other, especially the top three, the A's, Angels, and Rangers. And then Seattle always plays the division tough. So they've got King Felix, they've got some talented guys, so you can't count on them to be a pushover win like it used to be. So there'll probably be some beating up. But I also think part of it has to do with some other teams in the AL that are surprisingly better. And if you look at the AL East, some of the teams that were at the bottom historically are now at the top, and then you still have to contend with the Yankees and the Red Sox. Yeah. So the Blue Jays and the Rays and the Orioles are all improved teams. They're all teams that could make the playoffs. And then you have the Yankees and the Red Sox.
Yeah, the Blue Jays experiment works.
I mean, those are pretty well. Those are 5 teams that could all beat up on other divisions as well. Okay. So I think it's a little bit of both. Beating up on yourselves and then the improvement of some of the other divisions. So,
Travis, real quick.
I have pretty much the same order. I agree with Rex on the A's as far as I think last year might have been a little bit of a mirage. I think it's going to be hard for their pitching staff to perform that well again. They're all young guys, so I could see a couple of them having a little bit of regression.
Mm-hmm.
And
didn't they lose Cahill? Didn't he go to Atlanta? Maybe. I say that like under my breath. I don't know. He went somewhere, but
I agree obviously about the Astros. They're almost not major league ready, and
by design.
$25 million payroll.
Yeah.
A-Rod makes more than them.
Yeah, them and UPS's Dallas office have the same payroll, and but I have the division going the same way. I think the Angels could end up in the higher 90s if everything goes right for them and they don't deal with a lot of injury. But that's kind of how I see it going, and I see the Rangers returning to contention for the West next year.
Sweet.
All right.
So we'll hope that a second place finish is good enough to get in the playoffs, and then who knows what happens in the playoffs. So.
All right, when we come back, we'll talk about some extensions that happened this week. We had Tony Romo being extended by the Cowboys, and Elvis Andrus getting a nice extension from the Rangers.
All right, we're back on the Strained Hammy Podcast, and just this week, Strained Hammy extended my contract, but we're not going to talk about that.
$1.
We're going to talk about Elvis Andrus and Tony Romo's contract extensions recently signed over the weekend. Elvis signed a 8-year extension for $120 million, essentially making it a 10-year contract for $131 million, but he has an opt-out clause after 4 years. And I think that's after 4 years of the extension, so 6 years total remaining on his contract before the opt-out. So, good deal, bad deal. Plus, what are the positives of the deal? What are the negatives of the deal?
The positive is that you're getting a guy who is already becoming the face of your franchise. Great face, very handsome, smiling face.
Man crushed by Mark.
No homo. He's obviously great on the defensive side. Some people who don't watch him day to day will definitely scoff at giving that much money to a guy who doesn't have that much power in his bat. And to that, especially sabermetricians would say, you got to watch him play defense and you got to see him run the bases. That's where he provides most of his value right now. And there's the potential for him, and it's been demonstrated in other guys, there's potential for him to get better with his bat. Add a little bit of power, even if we're not talking home runs, just more doubles in the gap, stuff like that. So
we saw a little bit of that last year. He had 3 home runs, but he had more doubles than he's had in his career. So it's already signs of figuring that part out.
Right. 2 nice triples tonight.
Yep. He's got more hits every year. So I mean, he is already showing signs of improvement. As far as the money. It's a lot, but I don't think it's out of line with the market. I don't want to step on your toes, Rex, because I think you might be talking about it. But he makes him the 4th highest paid shortstop in the game after Jeter, Tulowitzki.
Rollins and Reyes.
Yeah, okay.
Jose Reyes of the Marlins.
Yes, or the Blue Jays.
Sorry.
Yeah.
No, it's okay.
This was
the entire
last
Marlins.
season.
No, last
Marlins.
Yeah, but I mean, I think that's totally in line. I mean, he doesn't have the power of some of those guys. He doesn't have the pedigree of Derek Jeter yet. So I see nothing really wrong with the contract. I like the fact he can opt out after 4, which I think he will, because it's Scott Boras. He's going to want to get a max. He's going to want to get as much money at an optimal time as possible. So, I like the deal. I don't see a whole lot to not like.
I'm on board with that too. Actually thrilled that we got him locked up, because to me that means, one, the Rangers aren't interested in trading him right now.
Mm-hmm.
And that means that we are going to have a chance to see the Profar and Andrus middle infield. So that excites me that they extended him because of that. 2, when you look at the other shortstops in the league that are comparable to the top 4 that we just talked about, Jeter is the highest paid, and we all know what he's done for the Yankees, but Andrus is a better defensive player than Jeter ever was. And even in his heyday, Jeter was a pretty solid defender.
Mm-hmm.
But Andrus is better than that. He's a better defender than Rollins, and he's a better defender than Tulowitzki. Tulowitzki makes some ESPN highlight plays, but that doesn't make him a better defender. Jose Reyes is a really, really good defender, and he has a better bat right now. But I think all around, I take it.
Yeah.
Andrus is that guy. If he's one of the top 5 shortstops in the league defensively, and he's got a developing bat, pay him like it.
Yeah.
Lock him up long term, and if you can afford it, do it.
Yep.
And I think that speaks to what the Rangers are trying to do, is keep those young guys here.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that I thought that kind of sparked my interest in it is that the 4-year opt-out clause. If he gets to that point, and this is kind of just the way I'm thinking about it, he's going to be somebody that the Yankees will covet. And they won't have Jeter at that point, because he's not playing until he's that old. So it could be something that if you're the Rangers and you're thinking, do we want to try to trade him within the next 2 years? Or let's try to lock him up as long as we can, trade him when he's a little bit older and the value's still high for us. So my thinking is Jeter's probably got 2 years left, I think, on his contract, and they'll probably let him play if he wants to play.
After this injury, man, I'm, with Jeter, I've been wondering, where is the end?
Yeah. Well, and that may change it. But if he plays out his contract, if he wants to play out his contract, I'm sure the Yankees will let him. And the transition between him retiring and them getting a replacement may or may not go that smooth. So the idea that I'm thinking with that 4-year out clause with Boras being the agent, he likes the Yankees because they throw money around. And it becomes trade option where he still opts out of the contract, but he gets a new contract with the Yankees that's worth more money. Now, I don't know how realistic that is, but if you can get 5 more years out of Andrus and then trade him for some good prospects, I'm okay with that too.
Yeah, because basically what you're going to do now, I get what you're saying. A 28-year-old Elvis Andrus that JD gets to play with in a trade market's not a bad deal.
That's a Mark Teixeira, actually.
Yeah. I didn't mind the money. I actually thought he was going to get bigger money on the open market. Just with the Dodgers trying to spend all the money in the world, and the Yankees are going to have to deal with. I don't think they're going to be very good this year, and I think it's going to be hard for them to deal with. And I think the pressure that's going to be put on the Steinbrenners is going to change things with how they're operating a little bit next year. And the Angels are trying to spend all kinds of money, and big TV contracts coming out everywhere. So I thought Elvis was going to be a free agent at some point in the next couple of years and get big money. I love the deal. I think that's what good teams do, is find a way to sign your best players in their second contract in any sport. I think it's a great idea, especially in baseball where guys can play through the end of those second contracts. I don't want to take a lot of time. I do want to just bring up with you, Mark. I know a couple of weeks ago you were trying to downplay how much you love Elvis Andrus because you were worried he was going to leave. And so you didn't put him on your list of guys you didn't want to leave, even though that clearly he's probably number 2
well,
or number 1. on that list. So, how happy were you when you heard this deal was happening?
I was very excited. I think I might have even done a little gesture in my cubicle in my office. Yes, but I know for some reason Elvis, while I do enjoy him and I certainly like watching him have fun, he hasn't quite resonated with me the way that a guy like Beltre has. For some reason, I can't quite pinpoint why. He's super fun to watch. He's a great guy, but I can't explain why. But he just hasn't quite resonated with me the way that other players have. And now that he's here for almost theoretically 10 years, maybe that'll change things. I do think that idea in the back of my mind that he might be leaving soon, I was a little scared to overcommit. But
now
I've been burned before.
Now we've got him locked up, and I think we all agree that's a good deal, and the way it was worked was a good deal. So let's take a look at Romo's contract. I think we might have a little bit more disagreement.
Speaking of overcommitting.
And I've been a Romo supporter ever since he started, and I'm for the deal. It was higher than I would have initially gone. I was thinking more of around $15 million a year. It's also a little bit longer than I would have gone, but I think there's probably some stipulations those last 2 years probably drop off. They don't have as big an impact in dead money or cap space when it comes down to it. He'll be 38 in 5 years, and so I don't think those will really matter. And then also, if that's the case, he'll already have most of his guaranteed money, and I'm okay with the guaranteed money, but the per year amount would be lower if he doesn't get those last two. So I'm okay with the deal. I've got some stuff that Calvin Watkins from ESPN wrote about. He compared the quarterbacks, and he basically said that you can't compare the contract Romo got to the Mannings or Drew Brees or Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers, because they've all got Super Bowls. So you got to compare them to really good quarterbacks who don't have Super Bowl wins and see where he lines up. And so he picked Matt Ryan, Matt Schaub, Jay Cutler, and Phillip Rivers. And if you look at win percentage, he's right in the middle at 59%. Phillip Rivers and Matt Ryan have 63 and 72. So obviously they're a little bit better, but I don't think anybody's going to argue that the time that Matt Ryan's been with Atlanta, their defense and their whole team has been better.
Yeah.
But here's a stat that really stands out to me. He has more 4,000-yard seasons than any of them, more 30-yard touchdown passing seasons than any of them. He doesn't even have the most 15-plus interception seasons, but he has more fourth-quarter comeback or go-ahead scores than anybody on that list. And only Matt Ryan has more game-winning drives, and it's by a few. And I think that means that the Cowboys' defense can't hold on to that go-ahead score. Is it justified? I think so. If you look at the rest of the contracts, Matt Ryan has $12 million, but that's his rookie contract. He's about to sign a new contract, and I bet he gets closer to $20 million. Phillip Rivers had $15 million. Matt Schaub had $15 million, but they were also both near 30 when they signed their deals. So Jay Cutler is the exception on the amount. He got a $10 million deal, but he was also 25, and I don't think anybody.
Oh, he's coming out of Denver where he wasn't.
And I don't think anybody here thinks he's as good as any of those other four quarterbacks, but he's the most comparable.
Yeah, I don't. I'm about to make a different argument, but I almost want to defend Romo against that list. I feel like he's the best quarterback of that group.
I would take Ryan over him.
Possibly, I would take Ryan over him. I think if you've got the squad, he's a better quarterback. But if you don't, he's not.
If you have the Cowboys' offensive line, Matt Ryan is not the guy you want.
It's the truth. Like, I'd love to have Aikman, but right now, give me Romo with the talent that we have on the team. So, but if you have a stud offensive line and a stud defense, a guy like Matt Ryan is a better way to go. But my problem with the Romo extension is this. I said 2 weeks ago I don't want 37-year-old Tony Romo, and this extension guarantees me 37-year-old Tony Romo, the full season of it. And because even if they draft a quarterback this year, which they're not, there's no quarterbacks.
No.
But if they draft a quarterback next year and he works out really well, financially they've almost got to stay with Romo to make it make sense for 4 years of the extension. So that's next year in his regular deal and then 4 years of the extension. So it's good. It gives that guy time to develop. But money-wise, you're tied to Tony Romo, whether you have a better option or not.
Well, and honestly, I think it actually brings the Cowboys or puts them in a position where they don't have to think about or address the quarterback position, at least a Romo replacement. They might look at a backup guy that they would pull in, and it'd probably be an undrafted free agent. I don't think they would spend a draft pick on him. But point is, they're not going to address a Romo replacement, and I think this is by intention from Jerry, for 2 more years.
But you have to. He's 33 this year. He's 34 next year. He's 35 the year after that.
Do you know how many draft picks Jerry has spent on a quarterback since Aikman?
No, I do. But what I'm saying is if you have a 35-year-old...
Quincy Carter and Stephen McGee.
Yeah, but if you have a 35-year-old quarterback, you have to have a young backup plan. Because whether he's signed up or not, he could retire because he's tired of getting beat up because you keep Doug Free out there.
Kyle Orton's 3 years younger than him.
Yeah.
There you go.
And Romo doesn't have the wear and tear, and
he does. Yeah. He gets sacked 40 times a season. He's got wear and tear.
Yeah, but I wrote in the post, like, he's only played, this is his 8th season happening, or 9th season?
This will be he started 6.5 seasons, but he's technically been in the league for 10.
Yeah,
so
but 3 of those he was scout team. So,
yeah.
But my problem with the Romo deal is that it's just a more example of the Cowboys doing it wrong. In the fact that...
I totally agree that they don't know how to work contracts.
No, in the fact that all I've heard since the deal got done is you had to do the Romo deal so you could have your draft. You had to do the Romo deal so you could pick up another free agent or 2. No, you didn't. You had to not franchise Anthony Spencer, who doesn't necessarily fit in your defense, and you draft a starting defensive end.
Yeah.
And if you don't miss on 2 straight drafts, you don't have so many holes that you can't just say, okay, we lost Anthony Spencer, that stinks, but now we can draft a starting defensive end, because if you spend a first-round pick on a defensive end, that guy's probably a starter in the NFL. It's not such a premium position that you can't find a starter at 18.
Well, there's so many points you brought up that are flaws in the Cowboys' office. Drafting from 2006 to 2010, they have 3 guys on their roster still.
Yeah.
And contracts. They have, and I don't know the actual numbers, but basically the way it's going to shape up, they're going to have about 10 guys on their entire roster that make up more than half of the salary cap. And that's just ridiculous. But it's because he overpays for a Jay Ratliff or a Miles Austin based on 1 season, or a Doug Free, for crying out loud.
Yeah.
And I don't think Romo falls into that category of guys that get overpaid, because I think he's earned it. And I think he's going to play well for 3 more years, 4 more years maybe. But it's still a really high number, and I think they might have been able to work it a little bit differently. Again, it depends on the wording of the contract. If those last 2 years drop off with minimal penalty, 5 years at $100 million is probably okay. I mean,
my thing though is you're paying $18 million a year for your quarterback, and if you're coming off a Super Bowl, you can do that. If you've been to the Super Bowl 4 times in the last 7 years, like the Patriots have, you can do that. If your quarterback's Drew Brees and he won you a Super Bowl, or Peyton Manning and he's a proven Super Bowl winner and you're on the cusp, you can pay that kind of money. If you're 8-8, you can't spend that kind of money on your quarterback because you don't have the team to support it, and you still have to invest in the rest of your team to get to that level. And so to me, and you're right, Tony Romo's not the problem. But Romo and Spencer, though I think they're both really good players, I would have drawn the line in the sand there, because this offseason is the first offseason that I'm discouraged enough to say I don't think they're going to get over the hump. And so there's no way I franchise Spencer. And there's no way I pay Tony Romo $18 million a year for essentially the next 5 years and watch him be 37 running my team. I need something new. And it's nothing against Romo, and it's not I want a different quarterback so much. What it is this team needs to change the direction they're going in financially right now. And they didn't choose to do that, and they're going to be in trouble.
You mean you don't like every other year having to squeeze under the cap? You don't like that strategy?
No, because in 2 years, you're going to say goodbye to a lot of guys who can really play
Lee,
that are
Bruce
young.
Carter, Tyron Smith,
Des
Bryant,
Yeah.
all those contracts are going to be expiring.
And so then you lose another draft or 2 draft classes that you actually did well on.
Right.
And so it's just...
Well, and I can kind of address that right now. Miles Austin and Doug Free, if you manage a way to get them off your roster by then,
Jay Ratliff, yeah.
that's
He'd be dead
even
yeah.
Jay Ratliff. You're talking just between Miles Austin and Doug Free, that's $15 million a year.
Yeah,
If you throw in Jay Ratliff, that's another $7 or $8 million a year.
yeah.
So those are guys that in that time frame can be expendable. The idea is, though, when you re-sign Sean Lee, Tyron Smith, and those guys, because of how Jerry works his contracts, they're going to be in the same boat 3, 4, 5 years from now where they can't sign good guys again.
My last point on this...
No depth.
Yeah, my last point on this is if you look at the guys who've won Super Bowls, a lot of those guys win Super Bowls on their rookie contract or their second contract before they get paid.
Mm-hmm.
Breeze won before he signed his $100 million deal. Flacco won before he signed his $100 million deal, and that Ravens team's been gutted because of that deal.
Yeah.
Brady, they've had holes. They've been successful, but they've had holes for the last 5 or 6 years in that team that they couldn't fill, and those situations have come back to bite them a lot of times in Super Bowls or championship games. So they're doing well enough, but they're not winning Super Bowls since he signed big money deal. And I think Manning may be the only guy that had a huge deal when he won a Super Bowl.
Eli or Peyton?
Peyton.
Yeah.
And so I don't think that paying that percentage of your salary cap to one guy, even if he is your quarterback and the most important player on the team, equals winning. And so if you already have a lot of holes and you need to improve, giving a guy that much money, I think, is a recipe for disaster. So I like Romo. I don't like the deal.
That's a good point. And percentage of cap space is a whole nother conversation. But to that point, briefly, cap's $123 million, so $12.3 million would be 10% on a quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if you're paying a quarterback $12.3, he's probably a middle of the pack quarterback. So is Romo better than middle of the pack? Yeah, I think he's a top 10 quarterback at $17 million a year. That puts him in the top 10. So that's why I like it. I think he's paid. I'd like to see that translate into playoff wins.
Yeah.
But
Well,
it's yet to be determined.
I don't have a problem with the deal on market. I do have a problem with the deal on where your team is
Yeah.
and what you need to be doing.
And that's the Cowboys. So, coming up next, we're going to talk a little Mavericks and what they've got left in the season.
All right, back on the Strained Hammy Podcast. Our final mini segment will be on the Mavericks, which I was much more excited to talk about before they were down 15.5 in this Laker game.
Which defeats my point.
Yeah, exactly. We're just going to talk a little bit about whether we think they have any chance at all of making the playoffs in this last 9 games, and also just where they are going forward, because I think the stretch since a couple of games after the All-Star break has changed some of our minds. Rex, you had some numbers you wanted to go through?
Sure. Just a quick rundown of the 3 teams that are competing for the 8th spot: Dallas, LA, and Utah, the remaining schedule and kind of where I see them going. The Lakers and Dallas are playing tonight, and as Travis mentioned, the Mavericks are trailing big time. The Utah basically has a 3-game lead because they hold the tiebreaker, and they only have 7 games left compared to the Mavs and Lakers who have 9. So they kind of have a leg up in that area. And I kind of ran through it and said that Utah had to go 3-4 for the Mavs to even have a shot at getting in there. And if you look at their schedule, 3 of their games are against the 26-win Hornets and 2 against the 27-win Timberwolves. So that's 3 wins right there. They would have to lose all their remaining games. Well, they have a road game against Golden State and a home game against Denver and a road game against Memphis, and then they got Oklahoma City. So I think they can get 1 win out of those 4 tough games, and I see them pulling out the 8th seed. LA's got probably the harder schedule, but I factored them losing to Dallas tonight, which if that doesn't happen, then it changes my whole perspective. And I figured Dallas needs to go at worst 6-3 over their final 9, but probably more likely 7-2 or 8-1 just to get into the playoffs. So going down the final stretch, do the Mavs make the playoffs? Doubtful. Do they get back to 500? I think so. I think they have a schedule that is in favor of them getting to 500. So the Bears will come off before the end of the season. But I don't see them getting in the playoffs. I think they finish probably 3 to 4 games back and don't even get in. So
Yeah.
500, yes. Playoffs, no.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you. It's been real nice to see kind of alpha male Dirk come back a little bit here. It's been real nice to see as a fan. It gives you a little bit more of a reward for actually watching the games if you're continuing to do so. But at this point in the season, you kind of are what you are. They're not a very good team. Even with, alpha male Dirk back, this dog can't hunt. It just can't hunt.
Mm-hmm.
And, will they get back to 500? Like you were saying, the schedule might, favor that. But
five teams with below 500 records that they face. So they have
Well, it's not just
legitimate
that.
opponents, but
Yeah.
I mean, and they're playing better.
Yeah, for the last 30, 35 games, they've played really well. They were at one point 10 games under 500, so for the last 30, 35 games, they're 10 games over 500. That's good basketball.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're playing really well right now. It's just with 9 games to go and Utah playing well and basically set up shop at home
Right.
for their final 7, can they play well enough to overtake them? Kind of, I think we're all in agreement. No. My biggest encouragement, like yours, has been seeing fully polished, ready to go Dirk Nowitzki. If they did get into the playoffs, there's a chance he could win you a series against San Antonio or I guess Oklahoma City, although both of those teams have so had the Mavericks number, and I think the Mavericks just black hole void at point guard would probably show through pretty quickly in those series because of Westbrook and Tony Parker. Either one, you got a massive mismatch. I guess if you caught the Spurs,
Who are the backups for those teams?
it doesn't matter. Yeah, they're better. Yeah.
George Hill.
Yeah. The other thing I kind of wanted to bring up is one thing that we've kind of talked all year of, will OJ Mayo be able to be something for the Mavericks going forward? Will Darren Collison be able to be something for the Mavericks going forward? Mary and Vince Carter, the guy that we haven't really brought up a lot and has really picked up his game during this time as the Mavericks have been great, is Brandon Wright. And he's a completely different player than he was a year and a half ago when he signed here.
Take the first month of the season.
Yeah, even almost the first half of the season. If you look at Brandon Wright's season and the Mavericks season, they're a mirror image. Mm-hmm. He played poorly when they were terrible, and he looks like a really good complement, offensively at least, to Dirk, and something that maybe they can move forward with, especially if they sign. They just need to have better players at 2 or 3 spots to really make a difference. Their bench is fine, so maybe if Collison comes really cheap, you can sign him to be your backup point guard, but you need a better starting point guard. You need another scoring threat, and And as much as I wanted OJ Mayo to work out, it looks like maybe he is not ultimately, and I know he's battled injury or whatever, but you're an NBA 2-guard. You're supposed to be the second scoring option on this team. You can't consistently score 10 points a game. It's just not good enough. So as much as I like some of the things he's doing defensively, I think, like you said, I'm really hopeful Dallas can get over 500. But I don't think they're going to make the playoffs, and even if they did, it wouldn't really matter much. So I am glad to see Dirk back. I told you guys earlier, if I was a free agent and I signed for the Mavericks, I would demand to live in Dirk's house and make sure that he was healthy and in shape to start the season next year, because 2 straight years we've gone through this really slow starting Dirk, and I think he needs the Tim Duncan yoga and good nutrition time machine to let him play a whole year. But I think he'd be more motivated to do something like that if he didn't see Darren Collison looking back at him when he went up to the
Well, I think that's
training rooms.
one of the things that's been the most promising about the end of the season is the play of Dirk.
Yeah.
Because it gives the Mavs fan a little bit of a light to say, if Dirk can perform at a good level for 2 or 3 more years, it'll give him time to bring in another all-star or superstar and build around him, and then kind of can start over.
Yeah, but to me, even if they suck after Dirk, I get it. That happens in the NBA when you have a guy who's probably going to end up being a top 25 to 40 all-time player. And definitely top 5 of our generation, behind like your Duncans and your Kobes, and I mean, I'd argue all day he's a better player than Kevin Garnett. I'm sure there'd be a lot of people to make the opposite argument against me, but
Garnett plays defense.
I'm from Dallas. Give me Dirk. If they're terrible after Dirk for a while, I'm fine. Let's do whatever the best we can the next 2 years, because he wants to.
You still have
or 3 years, because he said he wants to sign another 2-year deal. Whatever Dirk's effective for, let's put the best team we can around him, and stop screwing around with Darren Collison and Amnesty Elton Brand and Chris Kaman, who's disinterested, and just ill-fitting parts. Next year let's put together a team that makes sense that we can commit to for the next 3 years if we're going to keep Dirk around.
Yeah.
And get something solid going.
Do you think they will sign guys that they want to keep around for a little while? It seems like they're signing anybody who will agree to a 1-year or a 2-year low-cost contract. They'll sign you. But if you have any potential to be a long-term answer, they're kind of like, let's stay away from that.
See, I feel like Cuban is starting to say, okay, we missed on Darren Williams. If they missed on Dwight Howard this year, I think he's going to be a lot more apt to say, Al Jefferson, come on down. Eric Gordon, come on down. Anybody who can really do it, if I got to overpay you a little bit, or if I've got to commit to you and take away the possibility. The big-name superstar is dwindling away. And after Dwight, I mean, your next look at it may be LeBron again when he can opt out, and he's not coming to Dallas. Or Bosch, if they decide to get rid of Bosch, and maybe he'll come to Dallas, but he has never said a positive thing about the Dallas Mavericks ever in his life. So
he's not even a Dallas fan. He's from there.
Yeah. So I'd say this offseason, Cuban's smart enough marketing-wise to say, we can't do this again. We can't go through another season. The first year was okay. We still had Jet. Everybody loved him. We had J. Kidd. Everybody loved him. And people thought we could be competitive because of those guys. It was a strike-shortened season, or they may have even been a little more competitive if Dirk was healthy the whole time.
Yeah.
This year they might be able to sell you. They could have made the playoffs with healthy Dirk. But next year I don't think they can sell you again. Hey, it's a bunch of 1-year guys. And, hey, look at Chris Kaman. He was good 2 years ago. So I think we're going to have to make decisions about where we're going with this thing this offseason, whether it's big fish or a bunch of medium fish, because you've got money to spend.
How about they actually start doing something in the draft? You want to build around Dirk. Jay Crowder's a great start. Jared Cunningham was supposed to be a good start at a guard. He's supposed to be a guy that could come in and play 2 guard to replace Chet. I would like to see some of these draft picks actually work out.
Yeah.
I mean, we've talked about this before. The last draft pick that worked out was Dirk Nowitzki.
Yeah, and I've criticized Donnie in the draft, but it's the NBA draft, so it's sort of a crapshoot.
It's harder. Yeah.
I would like to see him have a better percentage. But I think for them to turn this team around with Dirk, it's going to have to be through free agency, really, because you don't have time to wait anymore.
I understand that.
But that's about all we have on this edition of the Strained Hammy Podcast. And don't worry about that Yu Darvish outing. A perfect game will come in 5 days.
Awesome.
All right, visit the site strainedhammy.com and follow us on Twitter at strainedhammy. Thanks for listening.
I'm on the microphone right now.